What's up guys, and welcome to the channel. We're going to be going over my top 10 tips for playing Spider-Man. Now, I've been playing Marvel Rivals since season 0, almost exclusively playing Spider-Man, and in competitive only playing Spider-Man. This season, season 1, I have one-tricked Spider-Man from bronze 2 all the way to diamond 3 100% of the time. I am not the most mechanically gifted person in the world, very far from it, but just using your brain, getting the right timings, positioning, and adding a few combos here and there can really get a lot of value on this hero. And I'm going to guide you through the top 10 tips to making your gameplay better, starting with number 1, above and beyond. Now, this is a positioning tip of how you should be positioning on this hero. You should always be using your movement and speed to get above and behind the enemy team. Now, you always want to engage from these surprising angles, because the joy of playing Spider-Man is when you time that with them starting to engage on your team, they're just going to get the most horrible surprise from somewhere they just can't see you coming, and that is the most effective way to engage. Because you don't have loads of health, any sustain at all, you need to be absolutely getting in on top of the enemy backline without them knowing you're there. Moving on to tip number 2 is economy of movement. Now, Spider-Man, as you probably know, has 3 swing charges, and you want to be breaking them down and always saving one of those for getting away. Now, the best way to break those down is 1 swing to engage. You save 1 swing for either dodging or follow-up, and then your final swing is always for getting away. Now, that is the best way to play Spider-Man, because you get most of your value from distraction and not necessarily getting the KOs themselves. But really important, get away with your life, get into a better position, and then go again. Now, when you are engaging, this brings me on to tip number 3, which are combos. Now, Spider-Man, being a fast-moving melee hero, relies heavily on getting the right combos to do the most amount of damage in that short space of time that you have to be effective. Now, the bread and butter combo, of course, as you probably know, is Spider Tracer, then launch into the enemy, uppercut, and follow that up with either melee damage or more Spider Tracers, and then of course you use your swing to get away. If you are dealing with someone a little more slippery, then the other thing you can do is Spider Tracer, but then pull in with your swing, hit the old uppercut, and then you can save your launch for when they get away. You get them another Spider Tracer and you just launch at them while they're trying to run away from you, and you get that little follow-up damage, and then you can swing away from there. So those are the 2 kind of bread and butter combos, and I've made some separate videos on those where you can kind of really break them down and help you learn those properly. Now, moving on to tip number 4, escape artist. It's actually an art form. You need to be learning how these swings work to really get the best movement away from people, because other heroes just have way more reliable and easy to land damage. You need to have that swing mechanic down, locked in, so you know I'm going swinging off of this, getting over there, because there's a health pack over there, and I'll pick that up and then I'll be ready to go again. You really need to be elusive as possible on this hero. So taking in point number 2, economy of movement, saving that 1 swing at the end, and that swing needs to be perfect to just get you away, get you to safety, get you to healing, either with your team or a health pack. Learning where those health packs are is crucial. Tip number 5 is probably the biggest tip, and getting this right will really improve your gameplay, probably the most out of all of them, and that is timing. And the best time to engage on Spider-Man, if you've been using this so far, all the tips that we've spoke about, timing is the cherry on that cake. If you engage when your team has already started to engage on the enemy team, they're not going to be looking up or behind themselves. The enemy backline is going to be looking straight forward, healing up their vanguard. Now, that is the perfect time to go on their backline, start doing damage to their strategists, because if then they turn their attention to you, their vanguard are already taking a ton of damage, and their strategists are going to have to choose between keeping up the vanguards or dealing with you. And if they're dealing with you, their vanguards are probably going to fall over because your team are putting a lot of pressure on them. So getting that timing right when the team fight really starts, and getting straight in onto the back line, distracting the 2-3 healers that they have, and then of course getting away with your life if you can, or taking one of them at least with you. Moving on to point number 6, which kind of ties into the others, but this is just to help you understand when you're playing Spider-Man, distraction is the biggest value that you can get. Now, you may not finish the game with the highest KOs, you may not finish the game with the highest damage. You may finish the game though, however, with something that is not on the score screen, which is occupying 2 or 3 people at any one time. They're all chasing you around trying to get you, and you're being super elusive and just causing them absolute mayhem to the backline. And that is not on the score screen, it is not trackable, but it is extremely high value. Now, it's really important to note, you get any scoreboard Andes that start writing to you in chat and saying you're not doing anything, ignore it, mute it, whatever you got to do, because distraction value is humongous and it is not to be overlooked. So even if you're not getting the KOs, you are still getting value. If you're sticking to the first points that we've already spoke about, positioning up behind them, using that movement economically, hitting your combos and then getting it out and doing all that at the right time, your distraction value is going to be huge. So keep up the good work and keep distracting those strategists. Point number 7, ultimate loss. Okay, you got to be really careful with Spider-Man's ultimate because strategists are so strong. Their ultimates can just shut yours down immediately. It's literally they push one button and yours is just useless, right? So trading an ultimate is sometimes a good thing, but ideally what we do with Spider-Man is we force out the ultimate of the enemy strategists, and then we still have our ultimate for when that's all over, which, let's be honest, takes forever. But anyway, when it is all over, we can jump straight in with our ultimate and just clean up the enemy backline. So ultimate loss, big thing to look out for. You really want to force out those strategist ults without using your ultimate, and then you can go in and get the big play you've all been waiting for. Point number 8 is just simply swing, swing, swing. You need to get really, really good at swinging. You need to get good in the training range, but then you also need to be good in the actual matches, learning which points are good to swing off, which corners can get you around, and also just learning a few little techs as well with your swinging. Just on top of that is swing settings. I've got a completely separate video on that to help you. Swinging is just, it's so valuable being good at it, and if you mess it up, it's so detrimental that it needs to be like within your bones. So you need to just be swinging all the time, getting really, really good at it. And like I said, I have tips on that if you are so inclined, but the main ones are getting your settings right and also just practice, practice, practice. Tip number 9 is overcomplicated equals overworking. Now, there is some crazy techs and tips that you can do on Spider-Man that loads of people are making cool videos, and don't get me wrong, they're brilliant videos, but most of it is just not needed. You don't need to do some of these crazy techs, so these crazy movement techs. You just need to keep the basics locked down and also working on that timing with your team. You just need the basic combos, and then you need to be elusive with your swinging. You do not need to overcomplicate it with crazy techs, and most of them use your abilities in an inefficient manner anyway, so it's probably very niche and not needed all the time. Definitely keep it simple, stick to the basics, getting those bread and butter combos locked in, and don't overcomplicate your gameplay. And then to my final point number 10 is essential settings. Now, they may not be essential, I'm probably like overstepping here. There, you can probably make Spider-Man work without using some of these. However, when it comes to swinging, turning off automatic swing is essential. It has to be done. You need to do it. And there's also a couple other ones that I would highly recommend, but these are maybe less essential. But the big one is making sure that your launch and your pull are on 2 different keybinds or controller buttons, whatever you are playing on, because having the option to pull or go in all the time is just undeniably a good thing. And also, you're not going to accidentally suffer from that kind of thinking you hit your spider tracer, but really you've then hit your launch a little bit too early, or the game hasn't picked up the spider tracer hitting yet. Not sure which one it is, if it's a bug or not, but it is detrimental to games. You can just literally lose games because you pushed E too early, and you can just completely avoid that by just getting your keybinds in the settings and just making sure those are set to 2 different buttons, and then you're never going to mess it up. Spider-Man doesn't reload, so use that key if you want on controller or whatever, to do your pull in or to do your launch or whatever works for you, but those are really, really important keybinds. When it comes to climbing, I think that's personal preference when you're wall climbing, whichever one works for you. And as for the other settings like the sensitivity, if you've got great aim, pull the sensitivity down a little bit, but for me, I have terrible aim, so I leave it on 100. That is my top 10 tips tips for playing Spider-Man. If you enjoyed the video, please do leave the old likey, and if you're feeling particularly jazzy, you might even subscribe as well. I'm going to keep making videos on Spider-Man, keep trying to empower the community and convince people that this hero is actually valid and valuable, and you can absolutely play Spider-Man in all your games, and you definitely should, because it's super rewarding and difficult but rewarding, right? That's what we're aiming for. We don't want any of these free brain dead heroes, right? Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate you, and I'll see you on the next video.